Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Puppeteers of Color Conversations. I'm David Bizzaro. If you don't know me, I am a Latino puppeteer based here in New York City. I've got experience working with Sesame Street, Jim Henson Company, SNL, and of course, building my own stuff and creating my own work as an actor, writer, director, filmmaker, editor. I do a lot of stuff. So we're really excited today. Thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you to all those who attended our last meeting. We got a lot of really great engagement. Thank you for your questions during the event, and thank you for your questions afterwards. We did get a few similar questions that I wanted to talk about just for a second. One of those was what makes all of the creators of this show sort of qualified to be putting this on. And we each have been doing our own personal studying throughout our whole life. A few of us have also done some studies within our own cultural heritage through our university careers. And we're all people of color. And we've had many experiences that have led us towards educating ourselves about our own culture and about how our culture has been involved in the United States. And so yeah, that's what brings us to the table. I also, I'm just checking my notes here. So yeah, so you know what, let's get this all moving forward. So I'm gonna bring up Liz Hara, who is handling our Q&A today. And just a brief thing about her, if you weren't at the last meeting, a brief bit about her. She's a writer and a builder for Sesame Street, and she's also been active in Asian American civil rights organizations throughout her life. Hello, Liz.
Hello, David. Very excited for another one of these sessions today. Thrilled to be talking with Raymond Carr, and I will be handling the Q&A session after the main conversation. So if you guys want to enter questions throughout the conversation, I will be sorting through those and getting to those after.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz.
Yep. See you later.
We'll see you soon. So yeah, like Liz mentioned, our guest today is Raymond Carr. He's incredible. Before we bring him on, I wanted to introduce Chris Hayes, who will be moderating the conversation today with Raymond. Chris Hayes is an actor, writer, and puppeteer, originally from inner city Hartford, Connecticut, now living in Atlanta, Georgia. On stage, he's performed with Dad's Garage, Whole World Improv, the Center for Puppetry Arts, the Mad Cat Puppets, and the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, which all of that's amazing. The Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra performance was absolutely incredible. On TV, he's been seen on shows like The Vampire Diaries, The Today Show, and MTV's Teen Wolf. He's also the Sesame Street Muppet performer for Hoots the Owl, which is one of my absolute favorite characters. Off camera, Chris has a background in Pan-Africanism and African American historical research, some of which can be found in the book African American Connecticut Explored. So Chris, I want to welcome you back again and moderating. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to you, man. Take it away.
Thank you so much, man. Thank y'all for joining in and watching. Really excited to keep these things going, honestly, because they start the conversation. And that's just really important. It's not about where you are. It's about where you're going. So right now, if you find yourself in a place where you're not knowing a lot and you feel like, I feel kind of uneducated, well, you know what? We have everything in books and online right now that you can start your journey into becoming educated and getting where you need to be. I wanted to say before we get the ball rolling and I bring in our guests, Black Lives Matter. In case you haven't heard it today, you should hear it every day. And I really wanted to just like focus on like this whole movement has been amazing in some ways. It's been sparked out of awful things, and it's really, the ball started rolling when we got a hard lesson and hard evidence and how Black people and people of color are living and unfortunately dying in this country. And that's horrific, and the things that have been happening. But the byproduct of that is that we have been, as a country, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have been really looking into the system set up here for everybody. So that this is good. These kind of conversations are great. Have conversations with your friends at home. Call someone up. The steps taken forward are not going to be from someone watching this video. They're going to be from somebody who watched this video talking to another person, because change happens when people we love give information and share ideas with other people we love. So maybe don't put somebody who's pigeon-headed in front of, or whatever the expression is, in front of this video. It may not do anything for them, but you being there and understanding and wanting to open up conversation, that will do a lot for them. Cool. So I'm going to bring in our guest. I'll read this bio. I'm okay with public speaking, public reading out loud. That's where it gets choppy. Here we go. Raymond Carr is an Atlanta-based puppeteer and a filmmaker who co-stars in the Jim Henson Company's series Splash and Bubbles, and is an ensemble member of the puppet improv group Puppet Up for Henson Alternative. He has also worked on shows like Crank Anchors, Walking with Dinosaurs, Lazy Town, BBC's Moon and Me, Earth to Ned on Disney Plus, and various projects for the Center for Puppetry Arts here in Atlanta, and Cartoon Network. Raymond's film Hattori, produced by Heather Henson's Handmade Puppet Dreams, is currently available on Amazon Prime. Check it out if you haven't, ladies and gentlemen. Raymond Carr, how you doing, man?
Hey, hey, hey.
Ooh.
Can you see me?
I can't see you yet. I can hear you.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Hey, look at
that. That's a totally different box.
I'm going to turn my laptop off. I have my laptop off so I can read people's things. Hey, hey, everybody.
Man. Look at you.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, look at me.
I like doing stuff like this because we get spiffied up, but only 50%. I'm wearing like swimming trunks.
Oh, big time. I got my shorts on. I got no shoes on. It's a business on top, party on the bottom. So.
This is cool, man. Thanks for coming on, dude.
No, thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. Yeah.
No, it's very exciting whenever there are just like more than one black puppeteer in a room. What's he doing here? Right?
Do
I leave? I stay? More than one. This is great. So we just want to talk to you today, and I'm sure that people want to hear about your thoughts and everything. I have a ton of questions. Just because stuff that I've been wanting to ask you, but now in front of the audience is even greater. So let's just start. Can you talk a little bit about your cultural background?
My cultural background is blackground. My cultural background is black. That's pretty much it. I mean, I'm a big, my ancestry has been lost in the wash and through slavery and everything else. So that's pretty much all I got. But I'm originally from Southern California. Right. And my family's from Texas and all that. But I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Been here for 20 years and proud to be a part of what's happening here.
That's great, man. How are you interacting with like the Black Lives Movement and everything that's coming up lately? How's that been affecting you and even your work too?
Yeah, so I was a little late to the protest just because I had to stay quarantined because I was about to start a job and everything. So I didn't get in there until a little bit later, but my girlfriend and wife partner has been out there a lot. And it's been amazing. It's been, intense. There's been some scary moments in there. She was on the ground when, peaceful protesters were getting tear gassed. And she was helping, protesters, teenage girls washing their eyes out with tear gas and everything. So, we were marching and a very intense white supremacist pulled out an assault rifle at us and was threatening us and different things like that. So it's been amazing to see what's happening, but at the same time, I've seen more people involved in the movement than ever before, more people of all races. And I got to say, today is a bit of a somber day in Atlanta and throughout the world because John Lewis passed away this morning or last night. But one thing that John Lewis has said repeatedly is that he's been so inspired by the youth of America and how they're interacting with the movement. And I feel the same way. You know, I'm not always able to do what I can do, but I'm very inspired by and optimistic about what we are facing because of all the people out there, you know, still in the streets doing it up.
Right. And we also lost C.T. Vivian, too. It's like two really influential civil rights leaders here in Atlanta, too, on the dang near the same day. It's crazy.
You know, and that's what's really cool about being in Atlanta is like John Lewis was my congressman. Like, most people don't know who their congressman is. And mine was like a cultural icon, you know, a civil rights icon that the world knew. So that's pretty dope.
It is a good, I mean, aside from the artistic stuff, it's cool to kind of be here. I remember this was not too long ago, I had my mask on, going for a walk, and my wife was like, Martin Luther King, that's his church? I'm like, that's his church. Like his actual church? Like, yeah, that's the actual church. It's the real church. That's it right there. You know, it's weird to be able to point to stuff.
I mean, MLK, like his mausoleum is right a couple of blocks from my house, and it's a national park. Like you see national park rangers on horses circling his house. It is like what? But yeah, it's a national park. It's dope. It's amazing what's around us.
It's fantastic, man. So I want to get into a little bit your background. I want to go back a little bit, not too crazy, but I know. You're like, what's he gonna ask me? Jumping off of your cultural background, you were homeschooled, right? Is this true?
Yeah.
Wait,
Everybody in the audience is like, oh, that makes sense. It all coming together now. Yeah, no, and joke's on you because y'all are homeschooling too now. So.
I already knew how to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
All of our kids are homeschooled now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I was. The one disadvantage is that I was homeschooled by church clowns.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents were clowns in the ministry, and my brother and I were doing puppets. So we were starting off doing clowning and costume stuff when we were younger, and then we started to realize it's like, I don't know if I want people looking at me like this. So our backup plan was puppetry. So we started doing puppets, and at the height of it, we were performing 200 times a year. We were traveling America, mostly around the Bible Belt, and just performing puppets for Pentecostal and Word of Faith churches, you know, big churches. That's actually where I met some of my lifelong friends who were in puppetry. And, you know, there's a big puppetry community in the church. One Way Street, right. With them. And, you know, it's funny, I was thinking about it. In 2000, there was a thing called Dream Team that One Way Street had. And they had a thing where you submit an idea, a video of your performance, and you could join the festival, the Fellowship of Christian Puppetry and Ventriloquism.
I feel like I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. iFest. So I was out there at 18 years old with a group of 20 different kids from around the world, really. And that was the first time that I felt connected to a puppetry community. And we spent a week, developing this show and then putting it on in front of 1,000 people. So that was an amazing eye-opening experience. And like I said, I'm still friends with Matt Laird, who's an amazing puppet builder, an animator. So some of us got out of the game a little bit, and left the fold. But I'm obviously I'm still doing puppetry. So
right. So was it your parents? Because I really want to get into the differences. I don't know how you moved over here. You weren't very, very young when you made the move from LA to Georgia.
No, I was 17 years old.
Right.
Came in my senior year in high school, kicking and screaming. I moved from Santa Monica, California to Union City, Georgia. And if you don't know where Union City, Georgia is, there's a reason. In hindsight, I'm very grateful for what I was able to do. But like when I moved out here, man, I was emo. It was not.
Wait, when was it? 97, you said?
98,
98.
September 98. Yeah.
There was nothing here, by the way.
Wow.
There was,
And
I
we
used to
weren't even
visit
in Atlanta.
97.
We weren't. Yeah, we were just like on the south side on the sticks. So.
No, these are worse, yeah. Because I remember coming here
Yeah.
in like the mid '90s too, and I'd be like, "There's a Chick-fil-A," and then a lot of people, and then come back here later. Everything.
But the thing that was here was the Center for Puppetry Arts
Right.
and Dad's Garage. And for those of you who don't know, Dad's Garage is one of the best, probably the best improv theater in Atlanta, one of the biggest. And so I started, my brother and I, since we were homeschooled, we just started volunteering at the center. Like we were just in the hallway, just stuffing envelopes and, doing whatever we could, making copies and whatever. And people were walking by. And I was like, "Who are these kids? Who are these teenagers?" And like just hanging out on this bench, stuffing envelopes. But we were just having a ball because we just that was the one thing that my parents were able to be like, "Yo, we're moving to Georgia, but we have the Center for Puppetry Arts." Yeah. And so now, and my brother got involved with Dad's Garage, and now he's the artistic director there,
right?
Which is very cool. And I'm still doing puppets and all that jazz. So.
You're doing a lot, dude. You're doing a lot of personal projects. It's great. But I wanted to focus on looking back at that movement now. What culturally, like racially, what was the makeup of Santa Monica versus Georgia? Were you around mostly inner city, or like who were the people you grew up with? I'm sorry, like what was that makeup?
So it was a fascinating. I've never really been locked into one thing, just because I've always lived in a lot of different worlds.
Right.
Like in California, I had my homeschool group, which was predominantly white, and then I had my church, which was predominantly black. And so those two people didn't know anything about my other life, and sometimes I would bring them in, but like they didn't really understand what I was doing on either side. So in the church is where I was doing puppets. We would perform in the inner city and things of that nature. And obviously there was some overlap in the white churches and what have you. But in my homeschool group, like that's not like, there were not many black people. There was one other black family in our homeschool group. So that's about it.
And then you had John.
Yeah, and then I had John. Which,
my brother's here.
Yeah. So yeah, and then when we moved out here, it was crazy because like this was the most black people I'd ever been around. Like seriously, like we moved to a church that was like very predominantly black, in a community that was very predominantly black. So this was like the first time I'd been immersed, and also like it's different from West Coast, like Southern, because like obviously West Coast black is different from Southern black. I remember this one dude, he asked me if I wanted any boiled peanuts, and I thought he said bald peanuts. Like, you mean the peanuts are bald? Like they don't have any hair? It's like, no, bald peanuts.
Bald peanuts.
Like I'm sorry, dude. I'm not trying to bald peanuts. I'm not trying to be rude, but I have no idea what you're saying. So there was definitely a culture shock for all that.
I got a big culture shock when I moved down here. I remember I was somebody was trying to tell me what page it was. He said, we're on page 79. I'm like, what page? 79. 79? Yeah, 79. 79.
Yeah. Right.
It's crazy. It's like that. It's so interesting to be trying to think how to phrase. I'm not even just trying to phrase this, but like that cultural change from north to south or from west to south is major. It's big. How did people view you when you got here? Were you viewed in how did they look at you being from the West Coast? I know I got a lot of weird stuff when I moved here, and when I was little, I come here, they would look at me like, "Oh, it's a white kid." I'm like, I'm clearly black, like, clearly.
It's funny because like West Coast definitely has a certain stigma or just idea of what that is versus what it is in the South. So I'd imagine it's different if you move from the North, because everybody knows what the North is. You have friends or family in New York or what have you.
Sure.
But in the South, it's still a little exotic, at least back in the 90s, it was still a little exotic, that's where hip hop was happening, and that's where like surfer culture and skater culture and all these kinds of things. So there was a bit of like, almost like a reverence a little bit, but at the same time, like I definitely wasn't black enough. But like, that's also just like what I've been my whole life is like, I'm never anything enough on that level. So, but at the same time, like everybody, you know, at the center, like I honestly, I felt so accepted at the Center for Puppetry Arts. The late great Bobby Box, who was a mentor and a dear friend of mine, was a producer, and he was the one who like picked me out of the, you know, volunteers and being like, yo, you should like try for an internship here. And then I did that. I was like, yo, you should get a job here and just work in like ticket sales. Did that. It was like, you should, you know, cast you in a show. And then he put me in like my first experimental puppetry theater piece, which is a big grant-based experience, which I encourage everybody to get involved in. And he was the one who told me about Lazy Town, who got me involved in that. He was the one who told me about Walking with Dinosaurs. So like Bobby Box and people like that have been incredibly giving to me throughout this entire process.
I think that's really important. I'd love to hear more about that. Looks like all the mentors that kind of come into the fold, and the people who use what power they do have to really make sure that everyone gets good chances. Because I do feel like sometimes I talk about what we got to do for the Black people up here. I'm like, yeah, this is great, but we need people, especially in actors sense, we need people who are in good positions to really open up the door and start building those ladders, man. And when you see really good mentors and people who are in those positions coming there and really pushing for diversity and helping people up, it's so inspiring to see.
Absolutely. You know, if I am any good to, if I show any goodness or kindness to anybody on set, it's because of Bobby Box. It's because of, you know, people who have mentored me. You know, Ron Binion on Lazy Town, like he taught me set etiquette, what it meant to be on set and how important it was to carry yourself. Like these people were the ones who showed me kindness, and those are the people that I have in mind when I show other people kindness.
That's great. I want you to talk about your experience overseas, at least culturally, because I wanted to know this, because you were, oh my God, you had to tell me about where it was. It wasn't, not Greenland, right?
Iceland.
Iceland, that's right, Iceland. You were in Iceland for most of Lazy Town, and I'm sure, like, what was that experience like, even when you're off camera?
Yeah, so Lazy Town, so so this is obviously it was a year of my life, so there's a lot of stories that could go on here. So Lazy Town was a very formative time of my life. I was 21, 22, so I was very young, and I wasn't just out of college, I was like in college. I'd done some shows at the center. I did my first XBT when I was 18, and then I like done Winnie the Pooh at the center, and I was like, yo, this is it, this is what I'm gonna do now. And so I was kind of in college, but I was like, man, all I want to do is like puppets. So I mean, I'll keep doing college stuff. And so then Bobby was telling me about this thing that Kay Wilson Stallings, God bless her, she started this thing where, you know, a lot of this is, I didn't know at the time, and I'm still not quite sure what happened. But I suspect what happened was, there was a Black character named Pixel, and I suspect that they were doing this thing where they had this multicultural, you know, bunch of characters, and they were like, okay, well, we probably need some Black people or brown people in this cast if we're going to be just casting right now. So I basically was an apprentice, and Ron Binion was doing the character, but he, like I said, he showed me so much mentorship and just took me under his wing for all of that. And so I was originally supposed to be out there for 2.5 months. I was planning on going back to college, and ended up staying out there for a year. So, you know, partially because the organization, the production was just so very much disorganized and didn't know what the heck it was doing. So I was there for first season, and you know, there's so many experiences, but like it was my first time like being out on my own. I'd never left the country before. But at the same time, like I really had to fend for myself on a certain level because I got into the culture of what was happening on set, but like, you know, I wasn't trying to get into any of the drama. I was just trying to keep to myself but also still like engage with the audience because I knew this was an amazing experience, an amazing opportunity. Right. So Noel told the story last People of Color conversation you had. And he said that he came in to do this thing, and the show he was talking about was Lazy Town, where the producer wanted him to act like the guy from Police Academy. And so I was actually up for that same character.
Okay.
I was up for Pixel. And so like, you know, I didn't know any other Black puppeteers. The only one I knew was Kevin Clash and Noel McNeil.
Right.
And Noel McNeil
like
was
most of us, yeah.
At
that time.
And honestly, I probably knew about Noel before I knew about Kevin, because like I watched, you know, the Yurgis Castle. I watched Bear in the Big Blue House and Puzzle Place. Puzzle Place was like blew my mind because that was the first time I'd seen a Black puppet on camera, really. And I put it together and was like, yo, that voice from the Puzzle Place sounds like that dude from Eureka's Castle, which is also like Bear. That's the same guy. And it was like, and he's Black. So I did this whole thing where I was about 3 months into Lazy Town. I'd been prepping this whole time. You know, Ron was incredibly gracious to me. He even let me perform his character at times. And these were like extremely difficult puppets. Like the puppets were so big, they were child size. So the pants tube came down to here. So you had to crank your head like this just to get your head out of the shot. And so I was right-handing this character a lot and all this stuff. So anyway, I went on this whole audition process, multiple weeks. And then I went away for like the holiday break, and I came back and I was like, I thought I was still in the running. I was like, cool, I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna find out if I got the role. I'm gonna find out if I got the role. And I walk out of the plane and I see a sign for my name, and then I see a sign for Noel McNeil. And in that moment, I was instantly like so excited to meet like the Black puppeteer who I idolized, and immediately knew I didn't get the part. I was like, oh,
I get it.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, Noel was great. It was really cool to meet him. I fought back the tears, and I like basically took a car ride back with him. It had like a Chris Farley interview thing. It was like, so that time you were on, yeah, that was cool, huh?
Cool. Remember Eureka's Castle?
Yeah, remember Eureka's, that was cool. But I hope I didn't embarrass myself too much on that. But yeah, but at the same time, so Lazy Town was crazy too because I was in a different country. And yo, for real, I have never been called nigger so many times in my life.
Really?
Yeah, like people like this wasn't an ongoing experience, but like I would walk down the street and get like hardcore stare downs, like that. You know, people are breaking their necks staring at me, and most of it was just like wonder and amazement, but some of it was just like I don't even know what, but like I got, you know, some of it was just a lot of drunk kids just like saying that at me, you know, from the passing car. Some of it was just random times, and then there was, you know, microaggressions to major aggressions.
Right.
There was a bar that we would go to called Coffee Thomas on Friday, which its translation is Uncle Tom's Cabin.
It's all American. It's like hamburgers, hot dog. Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, like I still have some of my best friends, I have dearest friends that I love and respect that are still out there. And yeah, I had an amazing experience, and at the same time, it was a crazy experience.
Yeah, that's a weird thing because I know, like, I read a lot of statements and stories from people who are just like, yeah, you know, things are better over in Europe, but I always suspect them, like, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, this is, you know, for real though, this is the way that white supremacy permeates our culture, is because like a lot of Europeans are just Asians and like people from around the world. They've been bombarded with white supremacy through TV. You know,
right.
The majority of people on television are white, and they have, they can play these different roles, whereas the more marginalized people are, only can play a certain kinds of roles, at least throughout history. It doesn't surprise you that like the rest of the world has an opinion about what it means to be Black, what it means to be Black in America. Like I locked my car out, I locked my keys in my car in Iceland, and the locksmith came in and he was like fiddling with the lock and whatever, and he said, "Oh, maybe you should try this. You guys are supposed to be good at this, right?" I was like, bro, yeah. And that was the thing. Like, you could just be like, oh, never mind.
Give me they got it that time, but that was not because of it. Man, I think, this business is, well, one, is very hard to break into. But once you get in there, you realize, once you're a part of it, you kind of like, man, there's so much, the power in everything that's being broadcast all over the world. You start to get it like, oh, that's why it's so heavily guarded on like every level. And it's getting interesting now because we're able to broadcast. I mean, we're broadcasting right now. So this has become powerful. But something about TV, man, is still, when I turn on that box, even if it's something I can't get on the YouTube or something like that, the shows that are coming across, they have, there's so much power in that medium still. I don't think it's not like newspapers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's just like the history of it too, there's also a lot more. We're doing this right now, but there's still 100 years or 80 years worth of television and 100 years worth of film that we have to answer to, you know what I mean? So and then honestly, like throughout that entire time, I don't think I ever was like, oh man, I wish there were more Black people here. It's like I didn't even know that it was okay to ask for that or to want that. You know what I mean? Right. It was just a status quo. It was just what it was, and so I didn't know any better, quite frankly. So it's only been in the past, couple of years that I've been able to say, maybe there's a different way to go.
Right. It's man, that's so interesting. It's just, I remember I've been on sets and place or like even audition for stuff theater wise, and I've been like, especially for like repertory and improv, like they've got a Black guy already. They're not gonna put two in there. Like that I've honestly had that fear before. I'm like, I'm probably not gonna get this. They're not gonna put two of us. What will we talk about? I guess there's that fear.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like, you see the other Black guy, and then you expect people to be like, "Oh, look at you guys are both Black. You should be friends." You'd be like, "Yeah, I'm trying to be friends with him." Like,
or the opposite thing was like, "This is your immediate competition. You should, you gotta be better. You gotta be the best Black guy." So, when I'm thinking about like, so that's representation and how much it matters, and I know. And when I watch some kind of shows, especially with puppet-driven shows, sometimes I see a lot of the human diversity is so nice, but that under the camera diversity would be really nice too. Have you been in situations and sets where there's been a good amount of on top and bottom, or have you always kind of been the minority on a set on an average day? You know what I mean?
Always. It's a complicated thing just because I don't like to say that obviously we know what the problems are and we know where we could do better and all that kind of stuff, but like, man, I am so grateful for the community that we live in, the community that we share. This is a very, there are very few jobs in the TV puppet world, but I would never say that this is a competitive industry, just because like, we have so much love and affection for all of us that we, obviously you get disappointed if you don't get cast in a thing or what have you, but it's like, yo, I feel so close. I never think of like anybody as my direct competition just because I love them all and I want them to be accepted. And I feel like that's a similar idea that people give to me. So, but at the same time, like, no, you don't see a lot of diversity, and you often start to ask why, right. And it's a complex question because it's a complex answer, and part of it is just like opportunities, yes, but it's also where you get them. idea that, if you are a white male, no disrespect, some of my friends are, no, but if you are, like, you grow up with being told you can do anything. You grow up in general. This is like a huge generalization, so you'll forgive me, but like, there's nobody who says, oh, white men don't do that thing,
Right.
You could do the things that you wanted to. Maybe you could point to like basketball, but like they were playing basketball before we got involved in it anyway. So like, there's no barriers culturally for that. Whereas for African American and women particularly, and other cultures, especially like first generation immigrants who have the burden of being, have their parents, looking at them as to like representing all these sorts of things. You just don't always see those opportunities because you have this idea that, well, this isn't our thing, or that we can't waste time doing that because we have to focus on uplifting the community. We have to focus on uplifting ourselves and our family and all these kind of things. There's just a greater responsibility that we put on ourselves and the world puts on us, just because there are so few of us that we represent, so few of them. So part of it is just like changing the mentality and getting the culture to be like, you can do this, you can take chances, you can take risks, you can be weird, you can dream weird and all this kind of stuff, and getting in deeper. But at the same time, like, you look at the puppet shows, like one thing that I recommend to people who are looking for answers, it's like, think about, like, you are doing, especially puppetry theater, you do these European folk tales, Jack and the Beanstalks, Rapunzel, Robin Hood, all these kinds of things. And that helps promote the idea that white is normal, or the white norm. Mm-hmm. And the way to combat that is to just add people of color in the cast. You paint your puppets brown and black, have an amalgamation of different characters in Rapunzel. I mean, it's fantasy anyway. It's not real. So you can take those chances and like think outside of the box, just by like, and then you start to introduce the idea that, oh wait, black and brown people can do these things just by seeing them on stage.
No, I like that a lot. Oh man, I want to ask you so many questions. I'll start slow. I had so much inside, man.
Bring it. I got something to say. Bring it.
When I think about, because I'm like, even people like you, because you're a creator as well, and I know that I'll speak like I know the future. You're on your way to like really, really great things, so you'll be in a position where you can.
Don't jinx it.
But you can. But you're in a position. I think about this is. I cannot talk about this man's show anymore, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway. The Cosby Show back in like the 80s, not necessarily him, but the show brought in so many African Americans behind the camera, working crew and people. And same thing with the spinoff shows, Different World. I'm sure there are, and Tyler Perry's studios the same ways, bringing in all of these people who never get a chance to get in that career, who can actually see crew and puppetry and all these things that seem like they're so far off, come to reality and be experiencing them. I feel like experience is a good teacher. But I wanted to, the reason I bring all that up is because you are creating right now, I want to talk about Joyriders a little bit, because you're creating your puppet fantasy sci-fi movie, and I know your casting was really specific, because I remember when the casting list came out, you were looking for Black children to be in that cast and that representation.
Yeah, so Joyriders and teens or adults that play teens. So like this is it's a PG-13 kind of vibe to it, So Joyriders, real brief, is about a group of inner city teens who from Atlanta who stumble across an alien spaceship and take it on a joyride through Atlanta. So it's kind of in the vein of, Flight of the Navigator and E.T. and A Never-Ending Story and all that kind of stuff, except with, Black teens from the hood. So, and giving them the voice, because I realized that, there's a trope of the chosen white boy, which is, you're the chosen one, you're the only one that can do this thing. And you can have, your ragtag group of like minority interracial couples and all that kind of stuff, but it's still like the chosen white boy trope. So I wanted to really flip that on its head. I wanted to like do a study of like how many like chosen white boy movies and films there have been throughout the years. But in our story, it's actually a Black girl, and so that's kind of where that genesis was. Yeah, you know, I think that but that's also the type of thing where I wasn't always doing that. You know, I wasn't always looking to have a voice or give voice to people who look like me, because I didn't necessarily know that I could. I didn't know that like I should, you know. A lot of my films had, you know, white people, Asian people, anybody else except Black people, just because that was the norm.
Right.
And also just like where I was. So like I had to take a step back and like really think about, explore myself and like think about, well, why haven't I done this? And partially it's just because it's easy to do the thing that you see. It's easy to do the thing that you've grown up seeing. And it takes a lot of effort, more effort to do the thing that you don't see, which is ironically enough, the thing that I've been doing my whole life. You know, I've been taking the road less traveled just because I'm a freaking Black puppeteer. So they're like, but that's all to say that I've discovered a lot about myself. You know, speaking, but it also in filmmaking, we did this film Hitori that was introduced by Heather Hinson's company,
Right.
Ibex Films, Handmade Puppet Dreams, which I encourage everybody to get involved with Ibex Handmade Puppet Dreams as best you can. They are such an amazing organization to help promote independent puppet films, and I cannot say enough about how important that is. It also just gets your voice out there. So I did this film, Hitori, and it's about these puppeteers that are all in Black with this one puppet who is white, and the entire world is made of puppeteers. So the ground, the floor, the air, the water, all of it is puppeteers,
Right.
just bodies mashed on top of each other. And so, and I did that not with any sort of, I wasn't making any kind of statement. In fact, I kind of didn't want to make a statement about race, just because I wanted the audience to come up with their own thing.
Sure.
But I did this weird thing, and it's going to be screening. It's on Amazon Prime right now, and it's going to be screening via Facebook Live on Tuesday. So that's a little plug. But I did this thing where I inverted the colors. So I made all the puppeteers white and the puppet Black. And just to give it like a different context, a different, you know, a different vocabulary. And it really made it interesting to see what that did for the story. So you know, as I've been doing this, I've just been trying to experiment more and more and more, and really push the envelope of what I can do and what it means to be me and my community. So
That's very interesting, like that theory. Ah, my goodness, because it almost does feel like that at sometimes. Like sometimes you're just in the world and you're just being pushed along, and it's like, oh God, I gotta hold on. And then you're trying to figure out those moments when you need to stand against the current and stand against the wave and make the place better for yourself. And this is definitely what we're kind of in that moment now. We go with the wave, or do we try to fight against the wave? It's insane.
Right.
How do we? Okay, so this is the big question. This is it. There's a million different answers, I'm sure, but how do we make that step to get more puppeteers of color into professional film and television, even into professional theaters, but just like get them in, because, you know, that's getting them into union, getting them in, like, I don't know what the answer is, but like maybe this may be the time for spitballing. How do we?
So obviously I've given a lot of thought to this. I think it has two folds to it. So part of the conversation is to our predecessors and those who have come up and given us opportunities to begin with, and to a certain extent, you know, have traditionally had these roles. And that conversation is, the world is diversifying. So it makes a financial sense for you to diversify too, because if you are constantly showing up on set and having, you know, the puppet department being made with 8 white guys, and then the next commercial you do is the puppet department is made up of 8 white guys, and then the next TV show you do, the puppet department is made of 8 white guys, while the rest of the world around you is diversifying, that is going to call into question as to what is going on. You know, why is this one facet of television production, theater, not changing with the times? And that begins to, you know, people are going to honestly not want to hire puppeteers as many times because they're going to give us a stigma. So like that is the financial reason why. And like, so there are those who need to just reconcile with that. But at the same time, you know, my teacher at the Hinton Company, the person who taught me during the workshops and who has really become something of a mentor and somebody who I deeply cherish, Alan Troutman. He has, you know, taught at college and junior college and different things. And he does a thing where there are several puppeteers who he just picked out, you know? He was like, hey, you're really cool, you're good, you should be involved in this conversation. You should join this workshop, you should do this thing. And just finding those people who you may not have, whom they may have not even thought of themselves as able to do this thing, and just pluck them out of the ether and just be like, yo, come on to our side and do this thing. And it does sound like, it might sound like affirmative action, or it might sound like a charity, just because like, why are you doing this for this one group of people when so many other people are pounding at the door trying to get in? And it's because, like I said, it benefits you, but also it's because the voice needs to be heard, and they haven't always been given the opportunity to do these things. So I do think that it, at least for the immediate future, like that is an important aspect of this. It's just plucking people out of nowhere and just be like, yo, get involved. And that's actually, I know I'm ranting, but like one of the things that was great about the way I got involved with the Jim Henson Company was I went in for the diversity workshop in 2015. And the diversity workshop was different from the Sesame Street workshop, which I know you participated in, because the Sesame Street workshop is like a couple days, but it's like an intensive, right?
Three hardcore days.
Yeah. Well, this was over like 8 weeks. So, and you know, it was spread out just a couple times a week, but it was a very intensive process, and we were teaching improv and puppetry and the combination of the two. But they ended up picking out people who had very little puppetry experience from the LA comedy scene. As a matter of fact, when I first got there at the Hinton, like I flew myself out there. I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. That like 300 people sent in their tapes to audition for this thing. 300 people of like minorities, women and minorities, which is amazing to me. And then they narrowed it down to like 25 or 30. And so it was like a big deal. And so I get there and I'm meeting all these people. First day, I met Dan Garza, which if you don't know Dan Garza, do yourself a favor and meet Dan Garza. He is the light of the world, and I love him so much. But that's also where I met Liz Hara. She's she's also an amazing.
Well, let me tell you who's coming next.
But like we got into, like, I didn't know what I was walking into, and the first thing I see Drew Massey and Donna Kimball, and they were like, "Hey everybody, so this is a puppet. You put your hand inside of it.
Wait a minute.
I have worked my life to be here." And so the reason why they did that is because, like I said, they wanted to reach out of just the community of puppeteers. And that was hard for me to hear, you know, honestly, because like I had been the one who had been like dedicating my life to this.
Right.
And now these other people who were going to be coming in didn't have the passion and the blood, sweat, and tears for puppetry.
Like you scaled the fence and then you're like, oh, it's open.
But I understood that the logic behind that. John Ludwig, who's the artistic director of the Center for Puppetry Arts, says that like it's easier to teach an actor to be a puppeteer than a puppeteer to be an actor. And I kind of balked at that. I kind of like took that personally. But there's a certain truth to that. So and I just commend the center and the Jim Henson Company for really stretching it out there and being like, yo, who else is out there, outside of the 20 people we know.
I keep looking. So because I remember I had this conversation with someone. We were talking about the way how do you get more people out there, and they're like, they got to make more stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's 25% of it is make stuff. So we can be like, hey, over here. The other side is making sure there's opportunities that once we're putting ourselves out there, if another 5 years go by and nothing changed, now I've got 5 years worth of stuff on YouTube no one cares about. I have stuff on YouTube. I don't even want to see. My mom hasn't seen all that stuff. It's refreshing to get those companies that are looking on bringing in people, because it is nice to see the diversity in there, man. I'm super happy you talked to me. We're going to get questions. If you have questions for Raymond, I see not a ton in the box. Are there a ton? I can't see really. Oh, yeah, not really. If you have questions for Raymond, go ahead, pop them in the box. Just populate them and we'll answer them live here with Liz. I guess we'll give a couple minutes. Nothing really down there.
I can keep talking.
I was like, I don't think. Yeah, how about this? We'll go for another 5 minutes for people to put questions, unless we're like, he's knocking it out, and then we'll do Q&A. But yeah, this is, man, it's so invigorating to see people of color in these positions. I think these conversations are great. I'm hoping we do more. Let me ask you this question. I'm going way back now since I can start to talk a little bit more. Do you feel like, okay, this is a Keegan-Michael Key statement. He felt that whether consciously or unconsciously, your ethnicity resonates with the audience. That's what he's saying. He's like, but that's him as an actor. So we're a little farther removed from being right in front of the camera. Do you still feel like your ethnicity resonates, even though they're not necessarily seeing your body? You're using puppet, and you're sometimes, you see what I'm saying?
It's funny because I fluctuated through this conversation. There was a time when I was convinced that the only reason why I was being cast in things was because I was Black, and part of that is true. It's like, let's talk about Black voice. You know what I mean? It's like, if you get cast in a thing and they went on Black puppeteer, it's like, okay, how Black do you want me to be? Because like for brothers like you and me, we have a white boy accent, and like,
I booked so many.
yeah. And so like you do have this moment where you kind of like, sometimes people like come up to you, or somebody sometimes they cast you. It's like, we're looking for a puppeteer, a Black puppeteer, and they hear your voice, and it's like, we were hoping a little more Black. And so I have to modulate that, or have to be aware of that. I tell you, the first time, and part of that is just me being in my own head, because you never know why somebody can cast you. Part of that is just my own insecurities, or just projecting, but so you just never know. But like the first time where I knew that I wasn't being cast because I was Black was Walking with Dinosaurs.
Wow.
And that was
This dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's just like, this is an animatronic dinosaur.
Velociraptor, so it's kind of African American.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing about this that, and like I said, there probably have been more times before that I was cast just because of me, not just because I was Black, but it was just the thing that I was always in the back of my head.
It's always going to be there,
yeah. So like, it's been fascinating to see that process, but at the same time, so like Dunk is a character I play on Splash and Bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
I say I think I heard my bio and it said co-star, but I don't think that's accurate, because Splash and Bubbles are the two co-stars. We're just in the ensemble cast, which is Dunk and Ripple, so it's 4 of us. So as well as a million other different fish, which is amazing. So Dunk, to me, he kind of has this like higher pitched voice, and he has been around the reef for a while, and he's very much a homebody, but he knows and loves everything about the reef. And so for me, he came out of this character that I developed through the workshops, which was kind of like this guy that was like, hey, what's going on, player? What you need? You want some watches? You want some of this? I got some food cheese, or what you want? So like, that's what Dunk was to me. He was just like the kind of guy who was like, let me show you around. And so I put a little stank on his voice a little bit, you know, to put a little accent on that. And I think, you know, I even asked, I talked to Johnny T about like, you know, this is much later after we wrapped in the capsule. I was like, so why did you cast me this? Because I had that still in my head. It was just like something that was embedded into my mind. It was like, just because you put like a spin on that character that we hadn't seen before, you know? I guess other people had been playing him and it's like dopey or whatever, because it's kind of a larger character that puffs up. And it was like, no, this was like a unique spin on that character. And for me, that was like, oh, so I put my culture into this character and it felt different. And that was affirming and exciting, but also like I know, but at the same time, I know that he didn't just cast me in that role just because I was Black. He cast me because I put something different to it.
Cool. All right. You said it all. We've heard it from the master. I'm trying to wrap it up like how Howard does it.
No.
You've said it all. No, we're gonna open up. We're gonna open up.
I got more to say
for Q&A. Thanks, you guys are great. You filled that question box up so fast. Raymond, brother, thank you so much, man. I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, I am. It's so funny to hear you guys talk about like me, because I obviously don't hear other people talk about me. Like, I feel like I haven't done anything. Like, I really feel like I haven't done enough. Like, there's so many people out there that have like just so many more credits, and like, but at the same time, like anybody who was like trying to get out there for first time performers and all this kind of stuff, like I have so much reverence for when I walk on set, especially at the Jim Henson Company. When I walk onto a lot, it is like a religious experience. So I have so much respect and I have so much reverence, and I know for a fact that I deserve to be there, but I'm not the best puppeteer there, because did you
We'll never know why, because there you go. Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. Because I know that there are so many more puppeteers who have just as many credits or more, who are at home, who are not working, you know? So anytime I know that I'm on set, there's somebody who's not working. And right. that gives me so much more respect and honor and just reverence to the job. Like I don't take any job I get for granted, especially with the Jim Henson Company. I just, you know, it just makes me appreciate that there are so many people out there who are not working, and I've been given this opportunity.
That's fantastic. Liz, are you there?
I am. Hey.
Really great. We're going to keep you on the hot spot for a little longer, Raymond. Q&As. I'm going to pass the Q&A off to Liz.
Yeah, we got some great questions in, but I think the question everybody is most interested in is, who do you love more, me or Dan Garza?
You are the female version of Dan Garza. How about that?
All right, I'm very flattered to hear that. Thank you. So yeah, Raymond, you and I met in the diversity workshop, which was fantastic. And thank you for sharing about that. One of the first questions we've got, you've covered working with some major companies and productions and their initiatives to be more inclusive, but how might individual artists who are making their own small scale work approach trying to be more inclusive? And this is also kind of like a general question, like that several other people are asking, is what are best practices for outreach, and how do we find other people?
You know, I have you know, obviously the pandemic has been really hard for a lot of us, but at the same time, I have connected with more puppeteers, puppeteers of color, just from around the world. And this is an amazing opportunity to just do just that, to reach out and to be like, if you are, you know, somebody who is producing things on YouTube or TikTok or what have you, just be like, hey, I really enjoy, I've been a big fan of your work. Maybe you find somebody on IG or what have you and be like, I'm a fan of your work. It looks like you're doing weird stuff. Let's collaborate on something, you know? Or you can, and honestly, just be honest. Be like, hey, I'm a white kid from Connecticut or from Wisconsin, and obviously there's not a lot of people of color around here, and I saw your IG, and I'd love to just like work on something with you and just put something out there online, you know? So I think that the world is becoming smaller, and it's okay to be honest that you just don't have a lot of interactions, you don't have a lot of opportunities. And for theaters, you know, we've been blessed to be around a lot of historically Black colleges. So that's one recommendation that I would recommend to everybody in the theater world, is just reach out to the historically Black colleges and get them in young. Reach out to theaters that are that traditionally cater towards Black audiences, and just be like, yo, we're trying to do some puppet stuff over here. Because I can't remember who said this, but like, puppets are sexy. Oh, yeah, Jean Marie, shout out to Jean Marie who said this. She was like, puppets are sexy right now. So like, people have, when you say, I'm doing a puppet show, and to other theater people, like-minded theater people, they'd be like, really? Tell me more. So, and everybody's also just looking for ways to stand out from the crowd of people online. So just like, be honest, be real, and be like, let's just work, let's just do something together.
Excellent. Another question is, curious to hear about the difference you experience or think there are, if any, between working on productions in LA versus Atlanta.
Who do I want to piss off the most? So I live in Atlanta, and part of the reason why I haven't left Atlanta is, and you know, people that ask me, it was like, oh, are you going to move to LA? People from
you
LA
should.
and
you should
Atlanta.
move to LA. Like, hang out.
Look, it's 98 degrees or 95 degrees in Atlanta, so I can see the appeal. But honestly, like, the reason why I've stayed in Atlanta is just because I can do more here. I have a lot of latitude here as to what I can do. I can freaking DJ in my shop. I have a 5,000 square foot shop that I share with other artists, and I pay a criminally low amount of rent for it. So that's the reason why I'm in Atlanta. But at the same time, like, anytime I'm in LA, it's not like I go to LA and they put me up in the Ritz-Carlton. I'm working as a local. Like, for Crank, and God bless Victor Yared, he was so gracious to me. He tried to get me in, and to a lot of people, on as many days as we could on Crank Yankers. But he was like, look, here's the reality. I'm going to give you, like, I'm not going to know till the week of, and you're going to have to figure out how to get out here. And I was like, done, boom, fine. Hire me as a local. And like, I'll just drop it and go. And I realize that it's a luxury. I have that opportunity, but I've tailored my life over the past 20 years to be able to do that, just because I haven't been able to, I haven't worked a job with more than like a week's notice, like, ever.
Yeah.
So the thing about Atlanta versus LA, Atlanta has a lot of opportunity to make your own things and to do whatever you want. Obviously, the ceiling is higher in LA, so you can go higher and do more things. But at the same time, LA is really stepping up their game as far as the community. You know, the community has really started to come together, and it's a really beautiful thing. So I will say that I'm not planning on moving out there, sorry, anytime soon, but I will come out there as much as I can, just because I love it both. I want it all. Also, shout out to New York. I'll come out there too.
Next question. Do you find yourself in a mentoring position to other POCs in puppetry?
So my favorite advice from somebody at the Center for Puppetry Arts when I first came there was like, stay out of the business, kid. I don't need the competition. That was half of a joke. But, you know, it's been fascinating because I have, especially just like I said, I've connected with so many more people throughout the country. And part of it is just like, just encouraging other people. If I see somebody who is doing big things or trying to do things, it's like, just encourage them. So a lot of times what happens is that I get a call or email or something like that and be like, hey, I'd love to just pick your brain on whatever, to take you out to coffee. And I usually say that, like, I'm going to, like, obviously I have a lot going on, and it's not because I'm like above any of that stuff. It's just that, you know, I don't always have the time. So it was like, hey, I'm working on something on my shop, come to my shop and we'll have a conversation, you know? So we don't have to, I'm not gonna, you know, schedule something and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, let's come here, have a conversation. So I try, and as much as I can, to have a conversation and to just be able to do things. But at the same time, I know that the best opportunity that any of us are going to have is the opportunities that we make for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that is ultimately what I encourage everybody to do, is to just get out there and do some stuff. And then if they say, yeah, I've been thinking about this thing or that thing, I'll spitball. Was like, yeah, then it can be like this other, oh, and I saw this other puppet thing, or hey, I'll give them a list of different shows to watch and different obscure art pieces to see and all this kind of stuff. So I try, as obviously we can all do more, and I want to do more, but it's yeah, we're trying to.
Do you actually give different advice to young people who are white versus young people who are puppeteers of color?
I don't. I would say that yes and no. The advice that I give to puppeteers of color is about representation, and you know, it's about like just knowing that you represent more than yourself. And that sucks sometimes, and sometimes you don't want to hear it, and sometimes you kind of roll your eyes at it. But yo, for real, if you are out there, and anytime, like I said, I come on set, I know that I'm representing more than me. And so because at a certain time they could be like, oh man, we got this POC on set, and yeah, he just wasn't as good, you know, and just every time we get a POC, it's just like, it's great, I'm happy for it, but like, it's just not as good. And that's like, so you got to try twice as hard. You got to try twice as hard. You got to be twice as attentive, and to understand that, you know. I tell people, it's like, I also work in the film industry as a production designer and art director. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, don't put your hands in your pockets. Like Ron Binion taught me this. It was like, we never want production to wait on puppets. You never wait on puppets, because at the same time that I'm saying, you know, you're representing puppeteers, people of color are representing more than that. Puppeteers are representing more, because every time you're on set, they're like, okay, what's up with these puppeteers? Why do we have to deal with, they want monitors? Oh, geez. So you never, production never waits on puppeteers, and more so when you're a puppeteer of color. So yeah, all that stuff is like, it just has more gravity when you are this way.
Yeah, when you're a POC, you don't get to be a POS.
All right, I like you better than Dan now.
Yeah, I knew I could do it.
That's
coming for you, Dan.
That's not true.
Nope, it's been recorded. I'm better. All right, we've talked a lot about how people in gatekeeping industry positions can help promote and amplify Black performers and Black work. But do you have any recommendations for how someone who is just starting as a maker or a designer or a puppeteer can help too? I like that.
Yeah, I think it's just about the types of stories we tell. you know? And I've never been the type of person that was like, stay in your lane, you can't tell this kind of story, or that kind of stuff. You have a greater responsibility if you're going to tell that story. You have to try harder to get it right if you're going to tell that story. But at the same time, these stories need to be told because it expands the world. So I think that, the short answer is just like, get out there and push the boundaries as to what kinds of stories that you're going to tell. Because at the end of the day, the stories will ultimately inform the type of puppetry you're going to do, the type of puppet you're going to build, and all of these and all these things. So start at the story level and figure out what you're trying to say or what you want to do, and then expand it out there.
That's great. And that actually leads into this next question. How can a puppeteer use stories or styles from other cultures without it being considered appropriation? What do you recommend as ways to honor and show respect? And like, what are some of the practical things that you need to do? What are the best practices for telling those stories?
I would say that if you were a theater company or you're doing a YouTube video and you want to tell a story about another culture, the easiest way to do it is to just take it slightly removed. Puppets can do anything. So have it be a story that involves animals and creatures and, the mythology of these sorts of things that still it taps into African and Asian cultures, and just have it be these, mythical characters. So, and then the harder thing would be to do a thing where you get into casting. If you want to tell a different story and you don't feel comfortable with doing it yourself, you can talk to your fellow puppeteers. You can talk to local actors, and be like, hey, this is a thing that I want to do. I really want to tell this African story. I think it would be interesting. This is fascinating. Let's collaborate on this thing and make it a part of you as much as it is a part of me, because ultimately stories are universal. So I think that that's the important thing. The lazy thing is to put a bunch of black puppets on stick and like tell the story of like the civil rights movement and be like, just maybe like, let's just look behind that, because like I said, it is puppets and you can do anything with puppets. So let's just like freaking shoot for the moon.
If you could create a show for your younger self, what would it be?
Honestly, I'm doing it. Like, Joyriders is that. Like, I am such a nerd. Like, I grew up on all this stuff, and like, I cannot wait for you to see Earth to Ned, because it is such a nerd dream come true for me.
The set was so cool.
I tell you, like, Brian was during the rap party, we were like watching videos of like clip shows of like what we have done already, and Brian saw me like looking at it and like kind of tearing up, and it was like, what are you doing, man? And it was like, shut up, Brian, I'm having feelings. Brian Henson. So, like, I'm such a deep nerd. So I would say that like all of the programming and the shows that I love, the Dungeons and Dragons and the He-Mans and the G.I. Joes and all of these things, I would put, me and people who look like me in the forefront of it. Robotech, Exo Squad, I put those people, at the front of it. So yeah.
As another nerd of color, we are deeply underrepresented. So we're about to wrap up, but quickly, when and where can we see Joyriders?
Good question. So it is currently in post-production right now. So we have a release date, put out a release date. But there will be a screening. We're going to do the festival route. So, but honestly, like, I'm not precious with any of my things. So once it's released, if people want to see it, I'll send them a link and what have you, because we're also trying to get some interest to make a larger project, a feature film for this. So it's kind of a multifaceted stepping stones for the thing. So yeah, that's kind of where we are at now.
Amazing. Can't wait. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I would just say that, like, and I've kind of said this already, but one of my favorite Jimmy Stewart quotes is from Harvey, I think, and he says, I'm not going to do the voice. My mother always told me is that in this world, you got to be either really smart or really nice. And well, I've tried being smart and I prefer nice. So when I am on set, like, I just want people to have I want people to leave set working with me with a good taste in their mouth. And it was like, that Raymond Carr, he's great to be around. It was like, was he a good puppeteer? I don't know, but he was great to be around. So I just think that, like, none of us are big enough to be jerks. None of us are important enough to be egotistical, to not just exude humility. You know, I've been doing this a long time, but I'm still like I said, I like to just be as honorable, honoring the system as possible. And I can be sarcastic and weird and all that kind of stuff, but like when it's down to work, it's time to work, you know. Anytime that I'm in California, I have a lot of really amazing friends, but like I know why I'm there. I'm there to work. So I would just say that, like, nobody owes you anything, and don't expect anything from other people, even if you have gone through a million different workshops and all that kind of stuff, because there are twice as many people who are just trying to get in the door as you are. So just respect that with your whole heart, and be as diligent as possible, and don't get lazy. So.
And I can vouch that you are phenomenal to work with and truly one of the kindest human beings. So thank you so much.
Oh, God.
I will. And yeah, let's bring back David and Chris.
This was amazing. Raymond, thank you so much for doing this and talking with us today. A lot of the stuff you said was really powerful and impactful, and like, I know that you joked earlier that you feel like you haven't done a lot, but just from hearing your experience and the knowledge that you really have a lot and have experienced a lot and done a lot for this community, and that's incredible. So yeah, thank you so much. Also, so at the end of all of these, we like to do what we call homework. And that's something, Raymond, that you would recommend our attendees and listeners in the future of this to check out.
Yeah, this is a weird one, but Phil Vischer, who created the show VeggieTales, he went on a 20-minute deep dive infograph about African Americans in America, and basically the wealth economy and all of these sorts of things as to how we got to where we are now, and wealth equity and all these sorts of things. So, and he just broke it down in such a concise and informative way with graphics and everything like that. So I recommend Phil Vischer on Facebook. You can look at his fan page and he has it on there. I think you probably drop a link in there too. But it was just, I learned some stuff. So it was great.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we'll be emailing that information to everybody that signed up. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we will have it in the information below, wherever that is from relation to where I am right now. But yeah, thank you so much, Raymond. This has been absolutely incredible. And thank you everybody for tuning in and watching and submitting your really wonderful questions. And thank you to all those who are watching this afterwards. We're going to do another one next month. We're planning ahead now, which is great. Our next guest is going to be Edna Bland. She is incredible. I am still fairly new to the puppetry community. I'm still meeting a lot of people. Raymond, I just met last year. in Atlanta, and it was awesome to meet him for the first time. You had an awesome nerd shirt on, and I was just like, this guy, he speaks my language without saying a word, and I love it.
Yeah, I don't know what I was wearing, but that checks out.
It was absolutely perfect. But Edna's amazing. She's a theater educator. She's an arts integration specialist, workshop presenter. She's amazing. She was mentored. I just found this out. She was mentored by Carol Spinney. And if whoever's watching doesn't know who that is, he played a little guy named Big Bird. And she was also mentored by Dr. Loretta Long, who played Susan on Sesame Street. It's incredible. So I'm really excited to have her on. So definitely be on the lookout for information on the next episode. So that's it. Liz, you're amazing. Chris, you're awesome. Raymond, we love you so much. This has been another Puppeteers of Color conversation.